Good morning. My name is Elise Garcia-Baca, and I work at the University of Maryland School of Medicine in downtown Baltimore, and I manage PhD programs and master's programs. I've done that for I've been at Maryland for about 5 years now. And before that, I was at Hopkins and a small art school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, my hometown. And then before that, I used to work at Stanford at the business school right during the height of the market crash, which was interesting. Um, so I've been thinking about what I'm hoping to get out of this course. I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm hoping to kind of see everything kind of interlock, kind of like a big puzzle, because I feel like we've had all the pieces up to this point, and I'm hoping that we can put them all together and kind of put it together in one big picture to fully understand, I guess, the holistic point of view of the way business works, and organizations and functions and that kind of thing. So that will be interesting to kind of see work out. I think something that companies need to consider with return to work and all of that, which has been chaotic at best for a number of people. And I say that from personal experience because I know the University of Maryland has had a lot of back and forth and somewhat whiplash from an academic perspective for students, which I oversee. And come to class, don't come to class, do the online, don't do the online. It's been interesting. So I think it will be interesting to see from kind of the student perspective and student happiness and kind of ensuring that there is a bit more of a hybrid approach to education, because I think that the last couple of years have proven that it doesn't necessarily have to be physically need to be in a classroom to learn, as evidenced by this class. And I think some faculty that I work with have picked that up and others are a bit more resistant to that change. So that will be an interesting thing to change because I'm kind of working to implement that for students ourselves at School of Medicine. So we'll see how that goes. In regard to employees and employers, the thing I've kind of been thinking about is, yes, a salary should be raised, for everyone across the board. However, I think the thing that would be most beneficial to do is if somebody is considering leaving a company and they want to apply for a position internally, that they should also be eligible to receive the same pay that an external applicant would be considered for. Meaning, if somebody is currently making, let's say, and I'm making this up, $60,000 a year, and they see a job that is $80,000 a year, and they would like to apply for that job, they have the qualifications, they have the skills. However, they're an internal candidate, that puts them at somewhat of a disadvantage, which for the University of Maryland, at least in Baltimore, I know that they have a cap at 14%, where you cannot make more than 14% in a new position than what you were making prior to that. So that puts people at a disadvantage because it makes them want to leave if they can make that 80 grand somewhere else versus the 60 they're currently making. So companies put themselves in a position where they're losing those valuable employees that they could otherwise retain and maybe just put them in a different position that would make them happier and kind of keep that knowledge in-house. And that I think that institutional knowledge is incredibly important. You actually can't put a cost on that. And so that's something I've kind of been thinking about a lot lately. Whereas if somebody from an external applicant comes in and they apply for the same $80,000 position and they're making 60, they are much more likely to be considered for that $80 grand amount, which I get it. They're coming in with an external perspective, but also there's a lot more that will need to go into kind of training up that person and from the perspective of the cultural information and kind of understanding how this institution in particular works. So these are just things I kind of have been thinking about a lot lately, because I know that I know a couple people at Maryland that have kind of been moving around and considering either leaving or applying for a new job, then thinking, well, maybe it's not worth it, this, that, and the other. So I think that's something to consider. I think that would do wonders for retention. And I think that would make for a happier employee pool, which happy employees, I mean, it's not just money, but it also could include a built-in work from home schedule. I don't know. I think there's a lot to be learned from, and I think there's a whole lot to be observed. And I will admit that any article that comes through about the current working culture on my news apps, I'm automatically clicking and skimming through it because I'm kind of like, oh, well, this is what they're doing over there. That's interesting to see how that works, you know. So I feel like there's just a wealth of information, and I think it's hard to kind of sift through and apply because regionally everything is specific, right? Maryland is specific to, or school of medicine is specific to the University of Maryland. University of Baltimore may have their own policies that I'm completely unaware of because I don't work there, right? And as well as a different kind of audience of students that they work with and researchers that they work with and faculty that work there as well. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of how that shakes out. As far as my aspirations to change and elevate business after graduation, I am not entirely sure at this point. I think my general kind of personality in jobs has always been to, let's see if we can make this more efficient. Let's see what we can change. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. And I think that would be something I would continue to do. And I think that now that I have the official kind of background information and the educational experience, that would kind of more inform the way that I can shepherd that process. Because, and this is just specific to higher ed, and FYI, a lot of things that I talk about will be higher ed based because that has been my life for so long, from a business perspective anyway. And I think the thing with higher ed that has fascinated and frustrated me immensely is that the thought of, well, this is how it's always been done. And that is something that just makes me want to pull my hair out because it's so incredibly frustrating because I think it just kind of hamstrings any sort of forward progress. And unfortunately, it takes something like a pandemic to force a number of institutions forward technologically from a perspective of, oh, well, how do we make online learning engaging and fun, and how do we encourage students to participate, and are they learning the same online as they are in person? So these are things that I just think about all the time, and I think that a lot of that is mired in that antiquated thought that if this is how it's always been done, then we should just continue to do that. However, I think there's always room for improvement. It's not that it's broken, it's just that it can use improvement. So I'm hoping that that's what I can do with, I guess, my knowledge and my experience from this program upon graduation, is to continue to encourage people to look at something from a new and a different perspective. Thanks.